Hey, Chargers fans, welcome into another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We are live on Conference Championship Sunday. We're doing this before the game, so we could be looking at some more coaching news depending on who wins and who loses today. But should be a fun Sunday. Cannot believe that there is only 2 more Sundays of football and then it's full-time off season, which is crazy. But joining me today are Tyler and Alex. Tyler, we'll start with you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I was finally able to start diving into some prospect film, just a couple of offensive linemen so far. And the Chargers are in a good spot, I think. So I'm pretty pumped to keep looking at those guys moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex, you just put up a video on our YouTube channel. Why don't you tell our listeners about that and tell us how you're doing?
Yeah, so I did a video on what the Chargers could do at number 13 in the draft. Since the last video I did, they had the fifth pick, so things are obviously very different now. So I did a video detailing that, and the response to that has been great. You guys are viewing the video like crazy, and I don't understand how that works with the algorithm, but keep it up, I guess. But yeah, I'll be diving into some Slater film for the Patreon this week, and I should be doing my mock draft, getting that up tomorrow. So yeah, that's all the stuff that I'm doing.
Nice. Yeah, it's been really cool to see the response from our YouTube supporters. We started that and kind of just figured that it would be kind of a long climb, and it definitely is going to be a lot of work, but the outpouring of support so far has been really fun to watch. So we have a great show for you guys today. Really excited to bring an interview to you about the Senior Bowl, which is coming up next week. Ben Fennell of the NFL Network was kind enough to give us some time of his, and I had a great time chatting with him about some of the prospects. Spent a good amount of time on the offensive lineman because we know that's a big need for the Chargers this offseason. So definitely want to tune into that. And then we're going to discuss some of the latest coaching news. We did have our first coordinator hire. We're still waiting on offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, but Brandon Staley did hire a special teams coordinator. And then we're going to do some awards, which we've been waiting to do these awards ever since the coaching news. And so, we've just been pushing it back. So let's start with the coaching news. Obviously, the Chargers announced the hiring of their special teams coordinator, Derius Swinton, who used to be a special teams assistant for the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers before that. Tyler, we'll start with you. What was your reaction to the Chargers hiring Coach Swinton?
Well, my reaction, like everybody else, was to go, what does his Wikipedia say? But my next reaction after reading all of that and his coaching history was, to all the fans who are all, the Cardinals were 18th in special teams DVOA. Like, first, I want you to tell me what DVOA even stands for. And then second, just grow up. Like, come on, guys. The Chargers have had the worst special teams unit in the league, like my entire bachelor's degree. So any jump from dead last to NFL average would be, a friggin' miracle. As far as he's concerned, as far as Swinton is concerned, he seems to be like a short-term miracle patchwork kind of guy wherever he goes, but he's just never established himself with one place. He finally gets a shot with the 49ers, but they have the dreadful Chip Kelly year and they fire him. So one thing I really like about him, though, is a quote that I pulled from somewhere I totally forgot. I apologize to whoever I'm ripping off right now. But he says, the thing I tell every player is there are only 22 guys that start the game that we can actually call starters, and they play special teams. I've yet to see a game that doesn't start with a kickoff or a kickoff return. That's my selling point to a lot of guys. So basically, you're important. Like, these special teams guys are so important. And he goes on to say, I had, Robert Quinn rushing punts when Tom and I were in St. Louis. I forget who Tom is. Then you have Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown, and Chris Harris, who just won a Super Bowl. I'm pulling the quote, but it's from earlier. With Harris, he started as a gunner. Antonio Brown is the best receiver in the league, but he began his career returning punts. So, I'm looking forward to this guy with that mentality because, we think, Austin Eckler and Drew Tranquil really gave themselves a shot to receive more reps because of how well they played on special teams. So, not everyone is a day one starter who's exempt from special teams like Derwin James. So, let's get the bottom half of this roster going and executing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like we saw what this team could do with the 20th ranked special teams in like 2018. So when they went 12-4 and made a playoff appearance and got a win, right? So if you just have better special teams than they have now, I mean, that's really all people are asking for. Obviously, you want to be a top 10 unit at some point that can, prove itself with efficiency. But I'm fine with, if they can get to like 20 this year, I think that would be a decent target because
Yeah.
it was really bad last year with people missing blocks and punt coverage, or Badgley just the whole season. It was a nightmare. So really, I'm just looking for better play. And I totally think his quote about special teamers eventually becoming starters is what this team needs, because you've seen a lot of guys struggle in special teams, or guys who struggled during the season but did well on special teams, right? Like Nasir Adderley, right, who did well towards the end of the season returning.
Yeah.
So if you could get more contributions like that, maybe from a Josh Kelly or somebody else, I think that would be a really good start.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this pans out. And obviously, like right now on paper, it does seem like it's a good hire. Obviously none of us are going to know how good of a hire it is until a few years down the road. But George Stewart, like he's got a lengthy career in the NFL, and he's done a lot of good work with the receivers in the league, but he hasn't coached special teams since he was Anthony Lynn's coach in San Francisco in like the 80s. So, getting a coach who sorry about that. Getting a coach who has actual special teams experience right now and has been in the league only as a special teams assistant. I know in Chicago he did work with Brandon Staley with the linebackers, but his whole thing in the league has been special teams, and so I think this is going to be a good hire. We'll see in terms of what this means do for the roster, because Tom Telesco let all his really good special teams players go last year, and then he replaced them with practice squad players and Joshua Kelly and Joe Reed, who never saw the field. So, I think this special teams unit, unfortunately, is going to be in for a little bit of an overhaul. We'll have to see. I would imagine a guy like BJ Bello, his stock kind of goes up because he played really well on special teams. But overall, I think, like Alex said, if they can get to 20th, I'll be so happy this year. Even if they can just get back to 25th, which is what they were in 2018, I think that'll be a big step in the right direction for this special teams unit.
Keep your eye on Cordarrelle Patterson. See, I finally get to use it, even though Steven totally undercut me on Twitter with that one.
I'm sorry, man.
I was so happy. I'm like, oh, no way. Anyways, for those who don't know, Cordarrelle Patterson and Brandon Staley were at Hutchinson, community college for 2 years together. Patterson earned, I think, first team All-Pro on special teams, and then the following year on offense with Staley. Not that Staley was the guy who was causing that, I guess, but and then they both went to Tennessee together. Although Staley was as a graduate assistant, I believe.
Yeah.
And Patterson was as the guy who ended up being the first round pick. So keep an eye on him. I think if for some reason Adderley goes to be a full-time defender, I guess, kind of guy, and kind of like Drew Tranquil was going to do this year, and if Joe Reed is just not Staley's guy, like, keep an eye on Patterson.
Yeah, well, and he was in Chicago with Staley and Swinton as well. So there are some good there's some good connections there. Like you said, I think Joe Reed can become a good returner. I think Nasir Adderley can do that as well. But I mean, Cordarrelle Patterson is one of the top 3 or 4 best returners in NFL history. So I would not be opposed to bringing him in. And there's some positional versatility on offense there as well. He played running back this year and receiver for the Bears. So I think that's going to be a really interesting name to watch this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, if he can just do better than we have been on kicking and punt returns, Adderley found something towards the end of the season, as we saw, but I don't know how sustainable that is going into next year. So it's very possible they might want a full-time starter. Also, if Jenkins is a free agent and decides to leave elsewhere, then Adderley would probably have to become a full-time safety anyway, right? So, in that situation, then I think you would definitely want a guy like a Cordarrelle Patterson, or at least some kind of specialist.
Yeah, we saw them with bringing Darius Jennings last year and have some competition. And so, who knows what would have happened if Jennings had made the roster, but competition is good for everybody. And that's something that Brandon Staley harped on in his press conference. So in terms of other coaching news, we know that the Chargers have interviewed Joe Lombardi, the Saints quarterback coach, for their offensive coordinator position. That's a really interesting one. I know everybody wants to point to his time in Detroit. He was the offensive coordinator 2 separate times, I believe, there, including the winless season. And then he went back with Jim Caldwell and helped them to their first 11-5 and first playoff berth in a very long time. So kind of mixed results in Detroit, but he spent a very long time in New Orleans working under Sean Payton and with Drew Brees. And so, I don't know what offensive coordinator in his third stint would look like, but he's well respected around the league, and I think there is a little bit of a connection there with Brandon Staley. Shocker, these NFL connections are just all over the place. But Joe Lombardi is an intriguing candidate to me. I don't know if I'm like all in on it or not, but I think it's an intriguing person to bring in for an interview for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think his work, obviously, under Sean Payton has been pretty good as the quarterback's coach. Granted, I don't know how much quarterbacks coaching you really need to do with Drew Brees, but at the same time, he did bring Teddy Bridgewater back last year and has done some work with Taysom Hill, right? So I think that that's definitely a positive for Bridgewater, not so much on Taysom Hill, but I think that that's something to look at going forward. Maybe he can do some work with Justin Herbert. I think that that's what everyone would want in that kind of coaching hire for the offense. So I think it's intriguing. As far as the 0-16 and 11-5 Lions, I mean, 11-5 is the best the Lions have had in a long time, and that Lions team was kind of thought of to be pretty terrible. So I don't really hold that against him. There's been good coordinators that have come from really bad teams previously. So I don't think that that's something to really worry about.
And I feel the same way. And our number one, I don't know if it was Alex's, but most people's number one candidate to get this job was Brian Dable, who didn't really he was with the Browns and they weren't really that good. And even the Chiefs, and at the time he was there, they weren't really that good. So if we're not willing to give these guys a second chance or third chance or whatever you're at, especially after you go to, you work under a head coach who's really, really smart and who's really, really good at what they're doing, like Dable did with Saban and Belichick, then we also shouldn't give Pep Hamilton a second chance. So, I'm willing to give maybe his time with the Lions wasn't that great, but I'm willing to give him, a shot because, these guys can learn, especially when you're working under some really good coaches. It seems like they're going to go the QB coach to offensive coordinator route, whether that is Hamilton, whether that's Steichen, who was a quarterback's coach, whether it's Lombardi, or if they're waiting for Kafka or Dorsey. It just seems like they're going with the quarterback coach turned OC kind of guy. But, I can read Lombardi's Wikipedia page, but honestly, I'm just waiting to see who this OC is before I watch film. I don't know what to expect from some of these guys because A, I haven't watched film on them, and B, I don't even know what Staley wants out of these guys yet. So it's kind of a waiting game for me. I'm not really particular about which OC they hire. If it's Lombardi, great. Whoever. I just kind of want to know who it is at this point, so I can get to figuring out what the hell they want out of this coordinator.
Yeah, and that's really the main thing, is that this offensive coordinator hiring is going to tell us a lot about what Brandon Staley wants to do. Right now, it seems like he kind of wants to expand on the Kyle Shanahan system based off of his interest in interviewing Kevin O'Connell, as well as potentially bringing up Tom Arth, his former boss from Akron. Both of those guys have, experience in the McVay Shanahan system. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I don't necessarily have a favorite or a person that I think would be the best candidate at this point. I would think that, a guy like Shane Waldron or Kevin O'Connell, who were with Staley in LA, would be great choices because they already have that relationship with Staley. But, at the end of the day, if we get a person who is aligned with Brandon Staley and is in total, in constant communication, that's going to be a step up, because that really was the worst thing about the Anthony Lynn staff is that the communication was just off, and there was disconnect from the offensive coordinator to the head coach. And we saw situational football suffer because of that. So, the communication needs to be better. And that's something that I'm looking forward to. Speaking of Pep Hamilton and Shane Steichen, they both have interviews this week. Shane Steichen is interviewing with Alex's Eagles, and Pep Hamilton has interviewed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think the other one is the Seattle Seahawks, if I'm not mistaken. The Titans, that's right. So it seemed, I would imagine that Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco and John Spanos have already had interviews or just sit downs with those two. And it seems like they're letting them explore their options. And I think that's the right decision.
Yeah, I mean, Ken Dorsey, as Tyler mentioned, I wouldn't mind that as a name to bring in just because of the work he's done, specifically with Josh Allen. And that's kind of a way of maybe bringing over Dable without bringing over Dable in a weird way.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind that. And yeah, I think a lot of it is just about the philosophy. And Telesco and Spanos have talked about like they sort of want it to be kind of a vertical, like top one down philosophy is the word they use, which is like everything comes from the head coach and everything's communicated well, right? Versus with Anthony Lynn, that wasn't necessarily their attitude. So I think, even if they were to bring Sykin back, which I wouldn't be in love with, I think with a new coach and a new system, I think he could still do okay with it. Same with Pep Hamilton, but I do think they will ultimately go in a new direction, whether that's Joe Lombardi or somebody else. We haven't really heard many other names, but I'm really fine with anyone at this point who is going to, use that kind of McVay Shanahan system and bring Herbert to the next level. So whoever Staley thinks that guy is the guy I really want.
Yep, well said. The only thing I'll add to that is just that I think that people are overhyping Pep Hamilton, I believe, just a little bit. And it's not that he doesn't deserve an offensive coordinator job, but some are acting like he's irreplaceable, and I just don't think that's the case. Like,
Yeah.
if he comes back, great. Like, I think that means that Staley believes that he can execute his vision. But I really just think there's a lot of guys who can fill that at this point, and I don't think Pep Hamilton is as irreplaceable as some fans have made him out to be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And frankly, quarterback development these days, is almost more important to have a private quarterbacks coach, and that's, what Justin Herbert has in John Beck. And we've seen all these other guys like Quincy Avery and all these other private quarterbacks coaches really make a big impact. What's his name? Palmer, that's worked with Josh Allen, is another
Jordan
one.
Palmer.
Jordan Palmer, thank you. Couldn't remember if it was Carson or Jordan. But Pep Hamilton is important, right? And he has a great relationship with Justin Herbert, and what he did this year was very important for Herbert's development. But a lot of people say like, oh, they just need to elevate Pep Hamilton as offensive coordinator, and if that's what Staley wants, I'm all for it. Like, if like Tyler said, if the vision aligns, if the philosophy aligns, go for it. But Pep's roots come from Jim Harbaugh. Like, Pep's offensive roots are power football, double tight, fullback, I formation, pound the rock, and establish the run. And so this isn't just like a smooth transition. Like, oh, Pep can learn the Kyle Shanahan system and do exactly what Staley wants. I think that's an awkward fit in terms of offensive coordinator. If he stays on as quarterbacks coach, I'm thrilled. But I think that he should be given the right to earn other positions. And if he aligns with what the Steelers want or the Titans want, which it seems like he does, then by all means, go ahead. And I wish him nothing but the best.
I mean, the Titans and Steelers make a lot of sense for him because the Steelers will do anything to boost their running game and make Big Ben's noodle arm throw less, and the Titans will give the ball to Derrick Henry. So, I mean, those are kind of perfect fits. Miami was another rumored, and Seattle was another rumored one. So, like, those are all places that are looking for better run games and looking for more stability. So, like, those all make sense for Pep Hamilton, Anthony Lynn prior to him being hired in Detroit, or even maybe Shane Steichen.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And Anthony Lynn getting that job in Detroit, it's going to be really interesting to see how that whole team pans out. It seems like Dan Campbell is just trying to get a bunch of tough guys. And so, I wish Anthony Lynn nothing but the best, but they're in for quite a long rebuild once they trade Matt Stafford, which kind of, shook up the league yesterday. And that's something that I can't wait, dude. This quarterback offseason is going to be insane. And I cannot wait to see all the kind of movement. Adam Schefter did report today that Deshaun Watson still wants out, and he's going to want out regardless of who is hired. So, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this offseason go forward. All right. So, obviously the Senior Bowl is coming up. This is huge. We know that Tom Telesco puts a lot of stock in the Senior Bowl, and I would expect him to put more stock into the Senior Bowl this year with, the lack of combine and the lack of, having scouts in person. So I think the Senior Bowl is going to be something that the Chargers take advantage of. So let's get to this interview with Ben Fennell, who was gracious enough to share his time with me. And I hope you guys enjoy it. All right. So thanks again to Ben for taking his time out. I loved the energy that he was able to bring to this interview. And you know, it's so impressive to hear these guys just write off these names and have all these scouting reports and things like that. I will say, you know, after I talked with him on Friday, I did go back a little bit and watch some film on Alex Leatherwood. I would not be surprised if his draft stock goes way up this week and potentially, you know, garner some consideration for the Chargers at 13. But definitely we'll talk about that later on. So let's get to some of these awards. Like I said, we did push this back because of the coaching stuff. And so let's start with most improved, because I think this is the one that we might have different answers on. Alex, we'll start with you. Who was your most improved Charger for 2020?
Hard for me to not say Michael Davis. I just think, he, before he was obviously a decent CB2, but I think this year he really elevated himself in terms of tackling. I think he was a lot better than he was in previous years. In terms of coverage, he finally turns his head around and doesn't draw as many pass interference penalties. And he just has that speed and that body to make things work. And, it's why, to me, other than Hunter Henry, I think he's the top free agent priority for the Chargers to get a deal done there. And I'm curious to see how someone like Brandon Staley would use him. He was just really solid all year. I can only think of maybe one bad game he had, and he was really solid when the team needed him the most. Like in the Buffalo game, we've seen how Stephon Diggs went off on people all year, and they went into Buffalo with no Casey Hayward and Michael Davis, and that secondary shut Stephon Diggs kind of out of the game. And that was a really impressive effort to me. So to me, I think Michael Davis is my most improved player of 2020, and I'm super curious to see what kind of contract he gets, and I hope he's a Charger going forward.
Well, he's the only defensive back starter that Staley did not mention in his press conference on accident, so we'll see how that goes. I don't read too much into that, but oops. Yeah. Great pick. Yeah, I think that's kind of the guy most of us would pick, honestly, but I'm going to go, for the sake of picking something different, I went with Jerry Tillery. Obviously, most improved does not mean most valuable player. To be honest, the only way Tillery could have gone from his rookie season is up, because he had 10 pressures, 8 tackles, and 5 penalties. Your penalty count shouldn't be half your pressure total. But this year, at least early on, he looked much different against the Bengals. He just developed, secondary pass rush moves. He looked faster against the Chiefs and the Panthers, and we saw that as well. But we also saw him do some really good work in the run game. He just looked like he got stronger this offseason. So, Jerry Tillery was not steering interior defensive lineman year one in the run game. So, while the final stat line of 35 pressures, 3 sacks, and 21 tackles, it's not great, and it's like 7 penalties. It's still a nice step forward for a guy who had no offseason to make that leap forward. I will say a special shout out, though. This is not going to go. This really doesn't make sense, but it does. I have to give Joey Bosa credit for being some of the most improved this offseason. I know it's like, oh, he didn't have a bunch of numbers or whatever. And how much better could he have been? Well, first of all, his pass rush productivity was great this year. It's better than any year I think he's had, except for his rookie year when no one knew to double team him yet. There's just something he did this year where you watch it in the mic'd up game where he, against the Bills, not only was he dominating that game, but he was letting them know that he was dominating them as well. And I just hadn't seen that from him before. So there's something in there that we didn't really get to see all the way through this year. And I think he took a really big step forward. Is he the most improved? No. But I really think he actually did improve this year, which is insane.
Yeah, I think, traditionally when you think of most improved, you think of someone like, Jerry Tillery or Michael Davis. But, the Joey Bosa leap from, really good to, if he hadn't missed the 4 games, I think he probably would be a first team All-Pro. I think that leap was a lot of fun to watch. I thought about going with Michael Davis as well. I think that definitely merits consideration. I'm going to go with Sam Tevi, though, because Sam Tevi went from terrible to serviceable, and that was all that we could have asked for Sam Tevi. I know that his pressure totals were not great. I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but, we saw Sam Tevi allow more than 6 or 7. We saw Sam Tevi allow more than 6 pressures 4 times last year, and he didn't do that once this season. So, the pressures were down. The run game blocking was up. I thought he did a fantastic job. I think what they were trying to do in terms of outside zone stuff fits Sam Tevi really well. And so I'm going to go with Sam Tevi just because, they needed him to make a leap from bad to serviceable, and he did it from switching. He switched from right tackle to left tackle, and that's not easy. There aren't many players who can go from right tackle, which is considered, the less important tackle position, to left tackle, which is considered the more important tackle position, and improve. So I'm going to go with Sam Tevi here.
And we've picked 3 guys. One might not be on the team. That's Davis. Tevi might not be on the team. And Tiller might not even fit well on this defense. So there we go. The 3 most improved guys might not even have much of a role next season or even be on the team. Yay.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I would imagine that Davis is back. I don't know about Tevi, but I think Davis will be back.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to Defensive Player of the Year. I think this is going to be unanimous because, Joey Bosa, like Tyler mentioned, just a dominant force this season. And he was never really healthy. Like, he played with one arm against New Orleans and still had 4 or 5 pressures and a sack, and he had 2 concussions. So Defensive Player of the Year, Joey Bosa is pretty easy for me.
Yeah, that's really is the answer. I think there was only one truly deserving guy, and then there's some guys you could vote for, I guess, but they're not on the same tier. I will shout out Kenneth Murray because there is one rookie linebacker. Now, I would have also picked Joseph, but I picked Murray because I figured someone else picked Joseph. There's only one rookie linebacker in the NFL this year who played 80% of the possible snaps in a finishing with the 2nd best tackling efficiency number in the whole league among all starters. The 3rd best among any rookie linebacker since Telesco's been here as the GM. Meanwhile, the other guy, Patrick Queen, missed the most tackles in the league and had the worst rookie linebacker tackling efficiency rating, since Pro Football Focus has that data. So what's insane to me is Murray did that, without James, without his front 4 healthy all season, without Tranquil, with Gus Bradley as his coordinator, no offseason. And he's a guy who played more snaps on defense than anyone else on the team, as a rookie, no preseason, no time to get his body into NFL shape. And I don't even think he was on the injury report once, so 100 plus tackles with the 2nd best tackling efficiency in the league for a linebacker. He gets my vote there. Obviously I give it to Bosa, but it's a really impressive rookie season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Murray is definitely someone who deserves some credit. But yeah, the award just has to go to Bosa. It's just insane that even through all these injuries, I was looking up, was Bosa really that great this season? He was 0.2% behind Aaron Donald in pass rush win rate, who is obviously the best, lineman in the league in the last 10 years, probably. So, he's just still really great, and people still undervalue him, I think, in terms of these, who's the best pass rusher discussions, because, TJ Watt has kind of surpassed Bosa in a way nationally in terms of attention, but Joey Bosa is still a unanimous top 3 guy in the league, in my opinion. So you have to give it to him. I mean, the Bills game was insane. That arguably is the best game of his career. Yeah. And I think what he just did really well this season was a lot of what Tyler said, right? Just letting the defense know that he can get there. We saw him get stifled before in some games, like the Patriots playoff game, where they just kind of ate him alive with Dante Scarnecchia offensive line coaching. So I think this was really the year where he kind of unleashed, and he didn't have a lot of help. I mean, the defensive line was kind of a mess all year. Melvin Ingram obviously was playing hurt and then hit IR. It was a challenging year for him to get guys, that were coming in and out of the lineup. And obviously he himself was in and out of the lineup at points. So for him to have the year he had and to have the impact he had, to still have the pass rushing ability he had, it was just incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see how Brandon Staley schemes up one-on-ones for Joey Bosa, because, TJ Watt, he's amazing, but he never gets double teamed at all. So, I can't wait to see what what is in store for Joey Bosa under Brandon Staley. All right, let's do team offensive player of the year. I'm going to say a caveat of not including Justin Herbert here, because I assume that he's going to win the other award. So let's do non-Justin Herbert offensive player of the year. Tyler, who's your guy?
I went with Hunter Henry. It's not his fault he couldn't finish the season, and I feel bad because this is going to be the first time he played 16 games as a starter, I think, ever. Yeah. He broke his own personal best in receptions and probably would have had 70 or more on the year. For perspective, Antonio Gates only had 70 or more receptions once the entire 2010s decade. Henry being 7th in drop rate among tight ends, which is funny because TJ Hawkinson and Evan Ingram both made the Pro Bowl and had 15 drops combined, but that's that's NFC, so different story. But so Henry only had 3 on a pretty comparable, targets and per game number. It just seemed like, early on, maybe lost in the middle, but definitely later on, that he and Herbert just had this really great chemistry. And there's no way you can take that away from Herbert this offseason. I actually think he's a priority over Davis, in my opinion. But, I for him to take, personally, I don't know how the snap count works, but when Virgil Green went down, it seemed like Hunter Henry had to come in and kind of just be a little bit more of a blocker, take on more of that responsibility. So his numbers weren't quite as big as they could have been, but for him to still finish the career best in receptions, really impressive. So I could have gone Keenan Allen. I think someone else is going to go Keenan Allen, so I didn't go Keenan Allen. It probably, the most efficient guy was Austin Eckler, but I think overall, if I don't go Allen, and obviously I can't go Herbert, I'm going Henry.
Yeah, I'm going to be the guy that goes Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just an insane season. I mean, he really only played 13 games. He played in the Raiders game, but obviously he was kind of used as a decoy. And you look at the numbers, 100 receptions, still even missing 3 games, he put up that number, and 992 yards, just short of 1,000. Like, the dude was just insane. And he really just had a really great connection with Herbert, which I didn't quite expect him to have. He obviously had 4 100-plus yard games. The output against the Jets was like his best game in years. Obviously, we're talking about the Jets secondary, but like that was just a monster 145-yard output, 16 receptions. Just, nothing you can do about it. And I think that just kind of summarizes his year. And for a lot of the receivers, it was, trying to find their connections with Herbert. We talked about Mike Williams and him trying to sort of find where he fit with Herbert. And, you got guys like Taron Johnson and Jalen Guyton that, found something with him. But Keenan Allen all year was Herbert's guy. Like, just every time. Sometimes he was guilty of looking at him too much. But it was just, he had an insane year. And, like, I can't believe that he really missed 3 games and still finished with 100 receptions. That's just insane production. And he's earning every bit of that extension he got.
He really is, man. And right up until the injury, him and Stephon Diggs were going back and forth with the reception lead. And obviously, the injury, held him back. But, his full 16 game pace with Justin Herbert, it was beat like, Michael Thomas type stuff. And so, yeah, that would have been insane as well. So I think Keenan Allen gets this award for me as well. I'm glad that Tyler mentioned Austin Eckler, though, because Austin Eckler, to me, if he hadn't torn his hamstring up and had just this freak injury, his full season pace was just over 1,000 yards and just under 1,000 receiving yards, which would have been an insane type of efficient season. And so I think Austin Eckler deserves mention there as well. All right, team MVP has to be Justin Herbert, man.
Yeah,
it just has to be. The way that Brandon Staley, I love the way that Brandon Staley has been talking about him and how he came in the COVID off season and had 5 minutes before his first start, and then had one of the best seasons of any rookie ever. And so I'm still a little bummed that he didn't get that yardage record. I would have loved to see that, but all in all, the crazy amount of records that he had, including the touchdowns, total touchdowns, most 300-yard games and all this stuff. And, just couldn't be happier for someone, because he's just like the most humble guy. Like, he's been golfing at Pebble Beach with his fullback and like, just casual. And he's just such a low key dude. So easy to root for, and obviously well deserving of the team MVP this season.
Yeah. I mean, he's just perfect. It was this year. And like, we keep saying it, and Staley kept saying it too, but like, to come into this year with no, first team reps and no off season, and just basically Zoom calls and, getting called in immediately at the start of the game in Kansas City, and to go toe to toe in that game with the best quarterback in the league. That's just some crazy stuff that no one could have thought that when he was drafted in April, that was the kind of stuff he would be doing. And he really dragged this team to a 7-9 finish. Like, I can't even imagine. And everyone knows I like Tyrod Taylor, but based on how this team played, like I can't imagine that this team would be better than 3-13, maybe with Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
Just Justin Herbert, carried them with his deep ball. Just did a lot of great things. And the most promising thing going forward was just his reads. The fact that he could just process things way better than he did in college. And it was done with, coaching staff that we kind of question when it comes to Steichen and Lynn and how well they work for him. So, if he gets a coaching staff that better suits him, like imagine, how good he can be and how much he can take it to the next level. So without a doubt, it's Justin Herbert, in the weeks where, it was painful to watch. He made it incredibly less painful to watch than maybe it would have been. So it's got to be Justin Herbert for team MVP.
I think the team could have won, I don't know, 5 games with Tyrod Taylor, maybe, but they could have won some games with the way the defense was playing week 2. But with the way that the defense fell apart and the special teams were so bad, there's no way that it would have been pretty dreadful. So for Herbert to come in and give us that life was unexpected surprise for sure. In my book, if I'm watching film on Herbert and not just going off the box score, I give Herbert 6 game-winning drives in 15 games. There's a 3 towards the end of the year that we all know about, but I also give him, the throws to get a win versus Carolina that Eckler just drops. The throw to get him a win against the Saints, but Badgley misses. And then 2 touchdown passes that were dropped against the Raiders, in their first matchup. Sitting here right now, as we're looking at prospects and preparing for the draft, I don't feel one bad bit at all that they're picking 13th because they won 4 games in a row. There's just so much hope moving forward that Staley can take a 7-9 team and win even just 2 more games, and boom, maybe they're in the playoffs again. What I want to take away those 3 game-winning drives at the end, from Herbert to not be able to, or to be able to draft Sewell? No, not at all. Now I'm coughing. So Steven, go ahead.
I'm getting emotional about Justin Herbert, man.
Yeah, go ahead, Steven.
No, I think that's right. And I think a lot of fans' concerns about like them winning games was due to them keeping Anthony Lynn and the coaching staff, and clearly, they didn't. And so I think that experience, we're going to talk about best moment in a minute. I think that experience for Justin Herbert was way more valuable than losing the games and, being 100% confident that Anthony Lynn was gone instead of, 75% or 60% or whatever. And, at 13, like Alex said, there's still a lot of great players like Alex said in his video, there are a lot of great players that this team can get and draft. So I think fans tend to overvalue draft position. So give me that experience, give me those game-winning drives for him. And I think that was the right decision. So, all right, let's talk about best moment. I think, there are several ones for this team, specifically about Justin Herbert. Obviously his first start, is an amazing moment. For me, I'm going to go best moment. I was in. Yeah. Because to me, like, that was when Justin knew, like, okay, I know how to win. I know how to carry this team. I know what I have to do to be an elite quarterback. And you could just see it like over the next few games that moment, the I was in moment, game-winning touchdown was something that made it clicked for him. And I think that moment is going to give him a ton of confidence going into the next season. So the I was in moment is my favorite moment of the 2020 season.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Jags game with Justin Herbert because that was getting his first win. As a Charger, there have just been so many weeks where it's like, holy shit, it's happening again. And even in that Jags game, you have like they blocked a punt and the Jags got a touchdown and took the lead, I think, in the third quarter. And it's like, oh man, is this really happening again? Then you have the touchdown to Virgil Green, which was an awesome throw. There were just so many awesome throws that he made in that game that I didn't know at that point that he quite had the ability to make. So that was just a super impressive game where, obviously that was a great Keenan Allen game and really a great game all around for the Chargers offensively. I think they put up 39 points. So that was really like, okay, this is Justin Herbert and he's here now. And, that game was so good that it made certain Chargers podcasts do podcasts again, right? You
Oh,
know,
geez.
it was a really great game all around.
Oh geez.
Yeah, it's a great game. I'll give you some moments that I just wrote down just because, when Gabe Neighbor scored versus Denver, this isn't just like a personal thing. Everyone just added me on Twitter because they think I hate him. I don't hate him. I
You
just don't
do
want him
kind
to
of hate
exist
him.
on the Chargers. Like, I just hate his existence. I don't hate him. So it's different. Um, Another one, just that Jags game. The fact that I didn't watch a game for the 5th year in a row because I was taking my girlfriend out for her birthday and the Chargers won for the 5th time in a row, I think it's pretty funny. I was going to pick Stevens' moment because, Herbert, he led the game-winning drive against the Falcons, but, Badgley kicks that field goal. Herbert was the guy who got in against the Raiders, and to have that moment and him just like realize like, yeah, I was in, like, yeah, let's go win. This is awesome. I think that's so great. So the only other one I would pick is Herbert's first snap, because we're all sitting there like, okay, here we go, Tyrod Taylor, watching all this film, and he got his rib injury or whatever. And all of a sudden you get the notification from Daniel Popper, Justin Herbert is in at quarterback. And we were like, excuse me? And everyone was freaking out. Like, there was that whole debacle of, Tyrod Taylor was too scared of losing his job or paying Patrick Mahomes. No, he got stabbed in the ribs, but that's another topic for another time. And then he goes down the field and scores a touchdown. And we're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
One of the most, like, we'll never forget that. Whatever happened this season, we're never going to forget Justin Herbert's first start.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. And, that game, like, I remember how unexcited I was after that Cincinnati game and wanting, like, we were about to watch a banged up Tyrod Taylor who, like, clearly was not his mobile self against the Bengals. And it was like, oh man, like, they're going to get boat raced by the Chiefs. Like, this isn't going to be pretty. And then Justin Herbert, like, I didn't even get the notification because I turned my phone on do not disturb on game days. So I can just like focus in on the game.
Yeah.
And then Jim Nantz and Tony Romo are freaking out. They're like, wait, Justin Herbert's in the game. Like, what is going on? And I was like freaking out right with them. So, that was a crazy moment. And that throw to Keenan Allen right over the fingertips of Tyrann Mathieu, I think is still like my favorite Justin Herbert throw, because it was that moment where I was like, okay, like, this dude can spin it. This dude can be a legitimate starter in this league. And so I think that throw is really what sold me on, like, I did my I'm sorry I was wrong about Justin Herbert video, like, basically almost exclusively like because of that throw. And then he just kept on building and building and building. And the touchdown throw to Keenan against the Panthers was insane. And then the touchdown against the Saints to Keenan Allen was insane. And then, the Buccaneers throws. And so, man, Justin Herbert he was the bright spot of 2020. And I couldn't be more happy to see where this team goes with him and Brandon Staley.
You mentioned the Bucks game too, and I think that was kind of an underrated moment for him to throw to Kite and just, I think to start. Oh, it was Tyron Johnson too in that game. That was sort of his coming out party. I think that was just an underrated game for him because he was coming off a sort of bad Carolina game. And then for him to come out and, be like, oh no, I'm going to go back and forth with Tom Brady for 4 quarters. That was just a really awesome moment. And you see where Tom Brady is today playing in the NFC title game. So I thought that was just a really cool moment for him. And that sort of was a game that reset the pace after sort of a bad outing in Carolina.
Yeah, we all thought it was, sorry.
Go ahead, Tyler.
No, based on what I saw against the Chiefs and the Panthers, like, Herbert looked good for a rookie, but we never really, like, he looks good, but it's a guy who had no preseason, no offseason, just showed up, he looks fine. And then he goes, like, we're like, he's going to get killed against the Bucks. There's no way he's going to be doing it. And then he's 70 yards, 50 yards. Like, what the hell? That really changed the narrative for Justin Herbert, not just a exciting rookie, but like a legit NFL quarterback at that point. So yeah, good call on that game, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So any other thoughts on anything we've talked about today before we wrap up today's show?
Do we want to do Super Bowl picks? Who y'all got?
Right now, obviously we're doing this before the game. I'm going to go Packers and Bills. I think, Antoine Winfield's absence today, which was just confirmed, is going to be a huge loss for the Buccaneers. And I know the Chiefs are the Chiefs, man. And the Bills defense and offense, like, the Bills are just like a really special team right now. And so I'm going to go Packers and Bills, and then Packers over Bills in the Super Bowl.
I'm gonna go with the Packers. I don't see Brady keeping up, though. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Brady won today, just because that's who he is in these title games. But
Yep.
I'm gonna go because it's in Lambeau. I think this is a really huge game for Aaron Rodgers, and that offense has just been like impossible
insane.
to stop recently. Like, if Devontae Adams, and even some of the other guys like Aaron Jones who have been playing like incredibly well. So I think it's going to be the Packers and the Chiefs, and I'm going to give the edge to the Packers. I think, Steven said I think Rodgers gets his second Super Bowl.
I think when we first talked about this, I had Ravens Seahawks.
Yeah, I
Clearly,
did too.
yeah, so that didn't work. I think we had the Chiefs in the AFC Championship at least.
Yeah.
I'm surprised the Packers turned I mean, Rodgers threw like 26 touchdowns last year, and he had 50 this year. So I don't know what the heck happened, but they've become so unstoppable. I will go Bills, Packers. I root for the AFC. Go Bills. Bills are going to beat the Packers in the Super Bowl. There we go.
Something different.
Yeah.
I was looking back at that tweet that I sent out, way back in August about Super Bowl picks. And like 80% of the people that responded had the Ravens, and I had the Ravens in the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
That hype train was fun, and it looked like for a minute that they had figured it back out, and then just that win in Buffalo, just stopped them dead in their tracks. What were you gonna say, Alex?
I was just gonna say, I think when I replied to that tweet, I had Niners Seahawks in the title game, and the Niners just completely fell apart, unfortunately, due to injuries, and the Seahawks let Russ cook and burn down the entire kitchen at the same time. So the Ravens almost made it, but I think I'm 1 for 4 on championship game calls. So yeah.
And for those who are interested, the Packers do run the Kyle Shanahan offense, and that is why Aaron Rodgers is so unstoppable, because it is the most quarterback-friendly offense out there. So if you're ever wondering why I want Justin Herbert in the Kyle Shanahan offense, watch today's game and watch what Aaron Rodgers does, and then watch what he does in the Super Bowl. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. We are so grateful for your support. Like I said, make sure you follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Alex is going to be putting out a video for our Patreon supporters, and I'm going to be doing one of those as well next week. So don't worry about it, you guys. We do have you covered on that end as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.